Welcome to Financial Issues with Shanna Burt, where we join reality with truth, helping you to make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now, here's your host, Shanna Burt.
Good Monday morning. It is Monday, May 6th, 2024, and we're so glad that you joined us here at Financial Issues. Financial Issues is a ministry that educates and equips people to honor God in the way that we invest in our stewardship and in our giving strategies. So you can become a partner with us. You can learn more about our ministry at financialissues.org. We hope that you will do that. So our mission, we very practically help you defund darkness and fund the light. So defund darkness is all about taking money out of the kingdom of darkness, not allowing corporations to use the money that God has trusted us to manage, and specifically to invest, to not allow those corporations who are, woke and promoting agendas of death with abortion and the LGBTQ agenda and so many of the other things that grieve the heart of the Lord. We will alert you anytime that there is a company that we've recommended to you that is no longer biblically responsible. We'll ask you to sell it, and we'll ask you to let the company know. So we have done that recently. We're going to give you, if you're not a partner, we're going to give you a little bit of a freebie. So we did send out an alert recently to sell AMD is the ticker symbol for the company. They're a technology company that makes semiconductors. They're very widely held, even in mutual funds. So if you want to know, it's very easy to know if you own that company outright. But if you want to know if you own it in your mutual funds, you can use our screening tool. Just go to financialissues.org, click on the resources tab. Then you're going to go down to evaluator, and you can just punch in the symbol of the mutual funds that you own and see if that particular company, you can see if it screens dirty at all. And then you'll have to check your heart and your convictions and ask the Lord if he wants you to keep owning companies who are promoting these ungodly agendas. And if you don't, then you should sell it. You should become a partner of Financial Issues and find out how to redeploy that money in a guiltless way, in a way that, that you're not going to be supporting agendas that you're praying against every day if you're a Christian. So we're asking you to not only sell AMD if you own it, but and there is another company that has a very similar symbol. Make sure that you get the right one. This one is AMD. So, and then you also want to sign our petition to, this is how we defund darkness. We're not only going to sell the company, but we're going to let the company know, hey, we're Christians. We have a certain set of values, and we can't own your company anymore because you're using our dollars to do things that violate our moral convictions. So you don't even have to be a partner to sign the petition. Just go to financialissues.org. It's super easy to do. You just put in your name, your email address. We don't share that information with anybody, but that's how, that's what gives credibility to our petitions, that it's not just a bunch of, you're not going to see Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and all of those different Jane Doe and things like that on the petition. You're going to actually see real names of real people, and hopefully the companies will take seriously. So that's how we defund darkness in a very practical way. We also encourage you to not only take your money out of the kingdom of darkness, but to deploy your money into the kingdom of light. And you do that by being a joyful and generous giver. And just this month, the month of May, we're giving you a great opportunity to deploy some of those resources. We're asking you to support Preborn Ministries. Preborn is a ministry that funds ultrasounds in pregnancy clinics across the United States. And they do this for the purpose of saving the lives of babies, because when the mothers see their babies on the ultrasound and they hear the heartbeat, they are 80 to 90% more likely to choose life. Not only the life of their baby, but they're also presented the gospel message so that they can choose eternal life for themselves. So we're asking you to go to financialissues.org, click on the preborn banner, and fund the light the good work that Preborn is doing in the earth. Stewardship verse today, Proverbs 27:1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Stay tuned. We're going to come back to this verse, but we wanted to get to a little bit of economic news. This week, a little bit light in economic data coming out, but we had a little bit of an overload last week. So we're going to kind of carry over some of that conversation. We got some of the labor numbers in last week. Had a lot of labor data come out, and the consensus was, I guess the general overview, the bottom line on all of that was that the labor market data was strong enough to keep the markets happy. So we also had the Fed last week, and they did not change interest rates. Seth and I got into a pretty good conversation on Friday's show about the Fed and, what does all of this mean with the changing of rates? And we talked about how the Fed sets the short-term interest rate, but that influences rates for things that really impact our own personal financial issues. Like, when we go to buy a home, it influences the mortgage rates, and we're seeing mortgage rates so much higher, car rates. It also, the Fed, with their monetary policy, they influence how much money is actually injected into the system, because when the government borrows money, the Fed is enabling them to do so by printing the money, and they can't just print it without monetizing it. So, the federal government has to sell debt, and that injects a lot of liquidity into the system, and that influences the markets. That is also government spending is what is driving inflation. So, I think we kind of wanted to pick up on that. We promised that we would, and we want to make good on those promises, right?
Yes, absolutely. Love to, Shanna. The verse that you mentioned this morning about not boasting about tomorrow, we don't know what day will bring forth. It's good when we think about the Federal Reserve to think about that, because it can make us worry about the future. Speaking of the future, though, Shanna, you have mentioned frequently on the show that you have a suspicion that the Fed will issue one rate cut before the 2024 election. They're running out of rate cuts to be able to do that. But do you still believe this to be the case?
Yeah, I do. I mean, inflation has reignited, and at that point, the, I guess, textbook thing to do for the Fed is just to keep rates the same, or if inflation increases enough, then they probably should consider raising rates. I think that would be a really bad thing for the whole economic ecosystem in our country if that has to happen. But I don't know that they can avoid it, but I don't think that they're going to do that before the 2024 election, because as much as the Fed is not supposed to be political, so much, hangs on. There's a lot of political pressure, whether they want to admit it or not. Even the Biden administration is talking about they should do what Trump did and make more noise about what the Fed's doing with interest rates. So, yes, the Fed, could be abolished, but it's really not likely. That's the threat that kind of hangs over the Fed's head, is that the government could totally do away with that system and do something else. But I mean, we're so far down the road. That's just, it's a possibility, but it's definitely not a probability.
Yeah. And in that similar vein, Shanna, quickly before we come to the break, when we're talking about the Fed and Jerome Powell especially, kind of seems like he's a puppet of a larger scheme here. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's true?
I don't know if he's necessarily a puppet, but he's just set up to fail. I mean, he's got a dual mandate to keep prices stable and unemployment low, but the government keeps spending money, and the government can't spend money unless the Fed enables them to do so. And so they're really, they're really tied into what the government wants them to do.
Absolutely. Folks, we'll pick up this conversation coming up on the other side of this break here. More financial issues coming up right after this. Stick with us.
Throughout
the month of May, FISM is partnering with Preborn to fund the light by providing 100 ultrasound machines to pro-life centers around the country. Now, how can you contribute? Well, for as little as $28, you can provide an ultrasound scan to an abortion-minded woman in crisis. And when that woman hears the heartbeat of her baby, she will choose life. Get this, 90% of the time. It's remarkable. And guess what? With the help of a donor match, for every 200 scans donated, that's for a net value of $5,600, Preborn Ministries will be gifted an ultrasound machine to place at a clinic in need. Each machine has the potential to impact hundreds of thousands of mothers' choices. Preborn also offers additional support to mothers in need and presents the gospel to every mother who comes into their clinics, knowing that salvation is the greatest gift that can be given to a mother and her child. So go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Thanks for hanging with us here, folks, on financial issues. We want to encourage you to fund the light with Preborn. So if you want to do that with your stewardship dollars and bless both Preborn and the Ministry of Financial Issues as well, go to financialissues.org and click that Preborn banner. That'll take you to a place where you can give securely to this great ministry that we have partnered with, saving babies and saving souls. Preborn's doing some great work. Shanna, let's pick up on that conversation we were having in that last segment there, talking about the Fed and what's really going on here. Since the Fed had just finished their monthly meetings, we're going to see what they're doing impacting the economy, the markets, and inflation in some way. We've talked a lot about that. But my last question with all this is, what can the Fed actually do to stop inflation? And do you think it needs to go rogue and stand up to the current presidential administration, or can it perhaps work with whoever's in, the Oval Office? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they'll never consider themselves going rogue because, they're apolitical.
Right.
They're not influenced by, so they're not really standing up to the presidential administration or anything like that. And that's one thing that Jerome Powell is pretty good at, is when he's testifying before Congress, giving his press conferences or whatever, he keeps a pretty level head. And he does, kind of sticks to the script. And I think that's important because so many people are watching and listening to every word that he says, trying to read between the lines. But they won't go rogue or do it in a meaningful way. I mean, they said that they were going to do quantitative tightening this year, and then they've backed off on that. But interestingly enough, I was looking at the debt clock, and that's actually one number that's moving backward, is the money supply. So a little bit of the tightening that they're doing is, skimming some money out, but there's still just a tremendous amount of liquidity in the system. And, if they go rogue, that means that they're going to have to raise rates when that's the very last thing that the Biden administration is going to want them to do ahead of an election, because it's going to upset the markets in a big way. And Joe Biden's approval rating is already so low. If we see rates go up from where they are now, and then we see the market respond accordingly and go down in a big way, that's just going to be, they're going to have to cheat a whole lot to win an election. And I don't know, we may just get kicked off of YouTube for that comment.
Absolutely. And we have Twyla coming on later, so
anyway. Yeah, we
don't have much of a chance on YouTube today.
Yeah, so make sure that you have our phone app. That's,
Yeah, right.
I guess that's just a plug for the phone app. But, if they did raise rates, that would be anathema for a lot of the banks that are holding long-term bonds, because the value of those bonds are going to decrease further, which means that their balance sheets are going to come under scrutiny. That's what happened with the banks that failed last year. So it's going to be a really bad thing for them. It's going to be a bad thing for our government if they raise rates, because we've got about a third of government debt that is coming due this year. A lot of that government debt, we're paying 0 to 2% on that debt. And you know what interest rates are right now that the government's paying? High fours, low fives. So we're replacing 0 to 2% debt with 5% plus debt. That means that the cost of servicing the debt is just going to go up and up and up. So what does that have to do with us? It means that the federal government is going to have to get more revenue. Well, how does the federal government get more revenue? They increase taxes, because the taxes are the only real revenue that the federal government has. And so that translates to our bottom line. So we have inflation increasing, that acts as a tax. We have the Trump tax cuts expiring at the end of next year, and the Biden administration saying that they definitely will not renew them if they stay in office. So many things riding on this next election.
Yeah, absolutely. Shanna, the long and short of it, I'd say, is if you are fed up with the Federal Reserve and you want to reserve some level of sanity, get a list of financial issues. That's really the only thing. That was terrible. I'm sorry. But regardless, I really appreciate that, Shanna. Hey, there was a quick headline I wanted to get your thoughts on here as well, as we were looking at some crazy things happening in the news. Their state health plans now must cover gender transition surgeries, according to a federal appeals court. Court ruled last week that state health insurance plans must include coverage for gender transition surgeries. Came in a pair in North Carolina and West Virginia. Surgeries for gender transition are medically complicated and cost thousands of dollars without insurance. In the majority opinion, the judge called the restrictions obviously discriminatory based on both sex and gender, and the court's decision comes following a string of cases on expanding transgender rights, including the recognition of gender dysphoria as a protected disability. Shanna, we're just seeing continually the LGBTQ nonsense reaching into every area of our culture, it seems, and health is not devoid of that,
Yeah, I was reading in that article that some of these transition surgeries cost, $10,000 to $12,000, all the way up to $40,000.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is how and the insurance companies are saying they're denying them just because of the cost of the surgeries. I'm like, that was a misstep altogether. It's like cosmetic surgery. Different things that people want to do. Those things aren't covered. I mean, even weight loss surgery isn't covered, unless it's a real detriment to your health. But you see how the progression is going here. They're saying that gender dysphoria is now they're recognizing that as a disability. So now that's setting the stage for these insurance companies to be required to provide treatment for it. Yeah. Because it's just like, you can't, I don't know. It's just a really, our country's in trouble.
It is.
Our country's in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we're so grateful for organizations like Samaritan Ministries, who are in that fight, in that healthcare front. But if you're partnered with Samaritan Ministries and you're using them for your health coverage, that those dollars that you're spending are not going to fund this stuff. Samaritan Ministries stands with us on pro-life issues and also on issues regarding gender and the family. So a good place to go is SamaritanMinistries.org. Best place to go is financialissues.org, and you click the Samaritan Ministries banner. But if you're interested in getting health coverage from an organization that loves Christ and loves you, Samaritan Ministries is a great place to go.
It is, and that's what we do here at the ministry to satisfy our healthcare needs. And the way that it works is that you get instead of writing a check to an insurance company once a month to pay a premium, you get to send your money directly to an individual.
That's
and
right.
you also get to pray for them. And you can be sure that you're never going to get a request from Samaritan to send money to Joe, who wants to be Jane, to
Yep.
provide for his transition surgery, and ask to pray for that. That's never going to happen. So it's a
Amen.
great way to be a good steward of your healthcare dollars.
Yeah, it's well said. Jenna, let's get to some partner questions here with the time that we have left. Danny is this first one. He's 67. He's saying, Shanna, I have a substantial amount of inflation-protected bonds. He mentions a couple, FI36 and FI70. They're down anywhere from 11 to 21%. Total amount invested is about 7% of my total portfolio. Would it be wise to hold and see how inflation moves in the future, or to sell and take the $20, I believe it's a $20 loss, or sell and reinvest the money in an alternative, such as one that he mentions there, which is one of the alternatives in the fixed income category? What do you think?
I think that's ETF 7 is the one that
Yep.
he's that he's looking at there.
Yeah.
So we've had a few questions about these inflation protected bonds recently. And if you'll notice, if you're on the partner page, I don't know how long ago this was. I'm going to say at least a year ago or more, we put out some guidance about how to structure your fixed income part of your portfolio. And, that's really the preferred way that we see to do it, because these inflation protected bonds, what happened with them is that bond prices move inversely to interest rates. So when interest rates go up, bond prices go down. 2022, the Fed increased interest rates tremendously. So 11 times, over the course of a year and a half or so. So as interest rates went up, even though to combat inflation that was going up, the prices of those bonds went down. Now the yields went up too, but the yields are back down on, if you just look at the inflation protected bonds. So if rates increase again, which we kind of talked about that, the probability of that, they may not, just at least here in the short term. But I think there are better alternatives. The yield is better if you're doing CDs, and I would say 2 years and less. Build the ladder like we suggest there in the partner strategy. And yes, you can use that ETF 7, which is not truly a fixed income investment. It just works similar to one. So it's designed to be market neutral and to really glean dividends from equity investment. So it's not technically a fixed income investment, but it is included in the fixed income portion of most of our asset allocation models there.
Good, Shannon. Next one here is Dan, different from Danny, saying, I've got some stock that is considered a long-term hold, and there's some of the same stock that's considered short. Is there a way to select to sell the long-term holds of the stock, but not the short infidelity? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think what Dan's getting at here is he's got these stocks in a taxable account, and if he sells them, he's going to have a gain, and he's going to have to pay some capital gains tax on those positions. So there is a difference in the tax depending on how long that you've held the shares. So it looks like he's bought some of the shares in the last year, and he hasn't owned those quite a year. If he sells those, he's going to be subject to short-term capital gains, which is taxed at whatever your marginal tax bracket is. So if you're in the 22% tax bracket, that gain is going to be taxed at 22%. If you hold shares for longer than 1 year, then you're only subject to the long-term capital gains, which could be as low as 0% if you're in the 12% tax bracket, all the way up to 20%. For most people, it's probably 15%. So there is a way, and you'll want to check with your brokerage platform to see how you designate, how you tell the system which shares that you want to sell. And, you would sell the long-term shares because it's going to put you at a better tax rate to do that.
Awesome. Shanna, thank you so much. Folks, if you listen on a half-hour station of the show, or if you watch the show on YouTube, we have to bid you a farewell. We're cutting the YouTube stream because we got Twyla coming up next. So make sure you have another way to watch the show. Best place, financialissues.org. That's for that half-hour audience as well. If you want the full show, financialissues.org/.
Here at FISM News, we bring you just the news grounded in truth.
And starting November 1st, we're going to be doing that just a little bit earlier.
We want to be on your schedule. That's why we're starting the news at 5 p.m.
You can now listen in your car as you're winding down from work, grabbing groceries, or even making dinner.
Now you can get all the daily updates you need at a time that's best for you.
And don't forget, you can always watch us on demand on FISMnews.tv or on the FISM app.
Many mothers find strength in the experience of giving birth as they overcome physical challenges and embrace the journey of bringing a new life into the world. You can help an abortion-minded mother receive discipleship, encouragement, and the strength needed to have her baby. During the month of May, you can bless your mom for Mother's Day by giving to Preborn on your mother's behalf. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM. The miracle of carrying a child creates a unique bond between a mother and her unborn baby. She feels the baby's movements and responds to their needs even before birth. Help create that bond between an abortion-minded mother and her unborn child by giving the gift of life through Preborn. During the month of May, you can bless your mom for Mother's Day by giving to Preborn on your mother's behalf. For $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound scan that will enable an abortion-minded woman to hear the heartbeat of her baby. 90% of the time, that sound will change a woman's mind and cause her to keep their baby. Give the gift of life to the woman that gave you life by sponsoring an ultrasound. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM. You can help an abortion-minded mother receive discipleship, encouragement, and the strength needed to have her baby.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shanna are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back, everyone. Financial Issues. Good to be here with you all. You know, we talk about more than just finances on the show, though that is the main topic. We also talk about our health, being good stewards, really of everything. This is mainly a stewardship show, and being good stewards of everything the Lord has given us, particularly our health. And so we're going to talk about that right now with a dear friend of the ministry, Twyla Braze, the president and co-founder of CCH Freedom. You got to check them out at cchfreedom.org. cchfreedom.org, doing some great work for us, everyday Americans in the fight for health freedom. Twyla, welcome back. It's great to have you on.
Oh, it's always great to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Twyla, let's begin with Medicare, something you and I have discussed before on the show, but there's always new news to talk about. We have many listeners who this impacts. Many listeners are using Medicare. What news can you give us as of the latest about the controversy of Medicare Advantage? And maybe bring us up to speed on what Medicare Advantage actually is, and then give us some of this controversy.
So Medicare Advantage is the health plan version of Medicare. Essentially, you have a choice between original Medicare and Medicare Advantage. Both of them have Part A and Part B in them. But when you choose Medicare Advantage, you are telling the federal government to give all of your Medicare A and B dollars to the health plan, and giving the health plan control over whether or not you get access to any of those dollars, and thus whether or not you get access to care. So there's about 52% of Medicare recipients that are in Medicare or in Medicare Advantage. And a lot of them don't really understand the problems that they could face, particularly with rationing of care. And so some of the news that's in there right now is the fact that the federal government, the Biden administration, has proposed cuts to the Medicare, well, not proposed, has actually cut the payments to the Medicare Advantage plans. And so the Medicare Advantage plans are saying, well, we're going to increase premiums, we're going to cut benefits, like they might get rid of silver sneakers, or they might get rid of, annual eyeglasses for you, that sort of thing. We don't have any idea what they're going to do. But here's the fact of the matter with Medicare Advantage. The federal government wants everybody in Medicare Advantage because they want to have a capitated, so a limited amount of money coming out of the budget for the Medicare program. And they give each health plan a limited amount of money, but then of course they give the health plans the ability and the power to restrict access to the services that you might otherwise get in original Medicare. So it really, caps their budget in Medicare. And since Medicare is in such a problematic state, insolvency expected in just 7 years in 2031, this is why the federal government wants everybody in a program that will limit the amount of money spent and therefore limit the amount of care. Now, a very interesting statistic just came out in the news, and that is that the Medicare Payment and Advisory Commission they want a complete overhaul of the Medicare Advantage system, and they note that the government will spend $83 billion more on Medicare Advantage recipients than for all the people that are in fee-for-service Medicare. So this is really lucrative for the health plans, and so they can sit there and complain about what they're going to do with, having payments to them cut. But the reality is this is one of their cash cows. Medicare Advantage is a cash cow. They get all this money, and then they have full control to actually not give you access to it. And the federal government has actually put out 3 reports saying that Medicare Advantage has denied medically necessary care to seniors. And I really believe this is just part of their strategy. They just deny and deny and deny. And doctors have said those words, deny, deny, deny.
Yeah.
And then they see who has the capacity to appeal. And then if you appeal, then 75% of the time you're going to get the care that you wanted. But this is an onerous process, and only 1% of the people who are denied ever appeal.
So, Twyla, not only does this seem to me unethical, unconstitutional, can very easily be weaponized politically, but this also feels like it goes against one of the core foundations of the medical practice, which is do no harm. And there's harm being done with Medicare Advantage. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, these are the health plans. They have no professional obligation to people. They know that people can go nowhere. I mean, this is unconstitutional. Medicare itself is unconstitutional. You are being forced into it, whether you like it or not. And then to have your life in the hands of these health plans who have no professional obligation to you whatsoever. And so the whole thing is unconstitutional. The whole thing was set up as a Ponzi scheme so that, in the very beginning, 19 million people were instantly Medicare eligible in 1966 when it became effective, instantly. And there had been no money. They'd never paid a dime into it. So this is why it's a Ponzi scheme, because now within 9 years, there will be 80 million people who are dependent on Medicare. 80 million people dependent on Medicare. And 2 years before that, it will be insolvent. And so this whole system, this big Ponzi scheme, is set up to ration care, to charge people more and more money for less and less care, as politically they try to keep Medicare alive. And this is just wrong. And this, of course, is why we've been working on to get the Retirement Freedom Act passed by Congress to let people out of Medicare without losing their Social Security benefits, something that the Clintons put in without, illegally, in my opinion.
Yep.
Got put into a procedural operations manual. It's not even law that you lose your Social Security benefits, but that is what's happening today if you don't enroll in this program. So really, it's a captured population, and it's going bust.
Twyla, it's such good news to hear that you guys are standing in the fight there to fight back against things that you're exactly right are truly egregious. Let's move now to some state-specific news here. We saw some big news coming out of Florida. The COVID-19 shot might be banned in the Sunshine State. Similarly to Arizona, there's a potential for the jab to be banned there. What's going on here with this potential? Are people starting to perhaps wise up and see, okay, maybe this thing didn't work as well as we thought it did? What do you think?
Well, in Florida, Dr. Joseph Sansoni, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
He filed a writ of mandamus in the Supreme Court. And this is a request, essentially, to ban the jab in Florida. And he has been very dedicated to this. And now this has been filed. And it seeks to compel the Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to confiscate the vials and to conduct a forensic analysis of their content. And this is not in the U.S. Supreme Court. This is in the Florida Supreme Court. And so this is, a request to the Florida Supreme Court to really do an investigation and in the meantime to ban the COVID shot, which of course has harmed so many people. And, it's an interesting thing because I don't even know if I've told this to your audience before, but Dr. Brett Weinstein in a conversation with Tucker Carlson in December, everybody should listen to the very end of this. It's not even about COVID. It's about the Darien Gap in Panama and all the people coming over into the United States through there. But at the very end of it, he talks about the fact that China did not give any of their people messenger RNA shots, never forced their people to create spike protein in their own body.
Wow.
And that the people who have had more than 3 shots, their entire immune system has been reset. They are now producing more IgG4, which downregulates the immune system, which makes it less responsive to the next pandemic. And he wonders about the fact that we have China, this huge country, who's not exactly our friends, who never forced their people to be in this position. And he says he hopes it's like he hopes it's a mirage. But he says if this is what has happened, the people all over the world, but also in the United States who have had the shot more than 3 times, they're not ready for the next pandemic. And he thinks the United States, if this is true, should really come up with a plan to neutralize this enormous threat against our country.
Twyla, speaking of China, one other question for you, and we might have to end here depending on time. There are some in the federal government who are not satisfied with the China was innocent, it was the bat's fault COVID theory. What are the latest on some of these investigations that you can tell us here?
Well, Senator Rand Paul, and a Democrat whose name now just escapes me, the two of them are really looking at they're going after the origins. And so this is great because, right, it's a bipartisan group of members of Congress who have decided that no, we're going to go after, we're going to try and figure out the origins of this. And I think it's really important because of everything that is coming out of investigations and about what happened between the Wuhan lab and people that have been funded by the U.S. government. Peter Daszak was just being talked to, in a hearing in Congress, I think it was last week. And then the FBI has now got a tip that the gain-of-function research in China, which was funded by Dr. Anthony Fauci, that there were words that said that it should leave no signature of purposeful human manipulation. So if this is true, and if this is actually written, this just shows how they tried to hide it, time of this funding, there was a moratorium in the U.S. government initially, and then that was lifted for vaccines. But there was a moratorium, and so it couldn't be funded in the U.S. Gain-of-function research.
Twyla, as always, we were not able to cover everything that we had planned today, but we always appreciate you so much and the work that CCH Freedom is doing to help expose some of these insidious things, and also to be able to stand in the gap for all of us standing and fighting for our health freedoms from a political field level. We appreciate that so much, Twyla. We appreciate having you on the program as always, and I look forward to the next time we have it. Folks, we've got more financial issues coming up right after this break. You're going to want to stick with us. 610-363-1110, number to call in. We'll be right back after this. Throughout the month of May, FISM is partnering with Preborn to fund the light by providing 100 ultrasound machines to pro-life centers around the country. Now, how can you contribute? Well, for as little as $28, you can provide an ultrasound scan to an abortion-minded woman in crisis. And when that woman hears the heartbeat of her baby, she will choose life, get this, 90% of the time. It's remarkable. And guess what? With the help of a donor match, for every 200 scans donated, that's for a net value of $5,600, Preborn Ministries will be gifted an ultrasound machine to place at a clinic in need. Each machine has the potential to impact hundreds of thousands of mothers' choices. Preborn also offers additional support to mothers in need and presents the gospel to every mother who comes into their clinics, knowing that salvation is the greatest gift that can be given to a mother and her child. So go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM.
If anybody's listening, thinking about joining, there's nothing like it. It's been great. I have peace of mind. I feel confident continuing to work. There's just a lot of things that y'all have added to my financial peace.
You guys are the man. So I encourage everybody, partner, get in there and watch the videos. Portfolio after portfolio, you hear the stories. It works. And you guys make it possible. And I thank you for that.
Married couples or even engaged, as you're coming together, working on your finances, God has blessed us incredibly, and it's been incredible to see what He's done in our lives. Just want to thank you, Financial Issues.
As a novice investor, which I am, and I'm certainly learning so much from y'all, thank you so much. Y'all take the fear out of it. Then my portfolio is doing great.
You've really encouraged us, and I know you've probably encouraged so many others as well.
Become a partner today by simply going to financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner. That's financialissues.org/join.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Well, folks, we'll take a look at the markets in just a moment here, but I want to tell you thank you so much for joining us on the program today. I hope you enjoyed that interview there with Twyla. Just a reminder of something that Shanna had mentioned at the top of the show. We have that petition for AMD right now. We're able to say the name of that stock because it is no longer on our list, no longer biblically responsible. So AMD, this company is engaging in LGBTQ activities, also pays for the travel expenses of employees seeking abortion. Both of those things, folks, are ghastly. And both are grievous to the heart of God, so we want no part of them. So we have our petition up on the website right now, financialissues.org. Scroll down and click sign the petition. As of right now, we have almost 300 signatures on that. I'd love to get to 400 today if we can. So click sign that petition there when you're able to do that. And let's make our voice heard. We don't just want to see things like this happening and say, okay, well, oh well, we'll complain a little bit about it. No, we actually want to bring this to this company and make a plea with them and say, listen, we don't like what you're doing and we want to invest in you. We believe that you're a good company. We believe that we can get a good return. We believe you've got a good business model. But because you're doing these wicked things with your money, we can no longer be a part of that unless you will repent as a company and just go back to doing the things that you do well. So I'd encourage you to sign that if you have the chance today, folks. We do have the Ag Report right now. We weren't able to get to it in that last segment, but we've got it here. Craig Haugard serving our farmers and ranchers well. Here is today's Ag Report with Craig Haugard.
The
This is Craig Hallgard with your Financial Issues Ag update for May 6th. Well, the corn market found support from a weaker U.S. dollar, South America production concerns, and a wetter pattern in the U.S. Midwest that's likely to slow down the pace of planting. We did see some heavy farmers selling of corn on Friday as farmers rewarded this rally. And that resulted in the basis weakening by as much as a dime in some areas. On the close, July futures were a half cent higher at $4.60 1/4 per bushel. In the wonderful world of soybeans, crop concerns in Brazil gave the managed money crowd an incentive to cover a portion of their short position on Friday. The heavy rains in Rio Grande do Sul are threatening the unharvested bean crop. It's estimated there's about 5.5 million metric tons that could be lost if they can't proceed with harvesting. July beans finished the day 16 cents higher at $12.15. Wheat markets closed higher on fund short covering as weather forecasts backed off on the rains for Russia's wheat areas, and private estimates of the size of the Russian crop was reduced once again. In the U.S., it appears as if dryness will continue in the hard red winter wheat country, the western portions of that at least, with better chances for rain in the eastern and southern half of the southern plains. On the close, Minneapolis July wheat was 5.5 cents higher at $7.14 Kansas City rose by 13 3/4 cents to close at $6.50 1/4, and Chicago was 18 1/4 cents higher at $6.22 Cotton futures benefited from a weaker U.S. dollar and profit taking to move higher. We had July futures up 244 points at 78.06. Livestock futures were softer going into the weekend. June live cattle were 12.5 cents lower at $176.67 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were a little softer as well, down 47.5 cents, closing out the week at $254.75 per hundred. And June lean hog futures were 97.5 cents lower at $98.95 per hundredweight. Class C milk futures had another great day with the May futures hitting a new life of contract high. When the closing bell rang, May futures were 34 points higher at $19.24. Well, this has been Craig Hallgard with your Financial Issues Ag update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
There he is, Craig Hallgard. Just got a great comment here from Robert saying it was super awesome to meet and talk with both Craig and Twyla at the FISM retreat. Hope they make it to the next one. I hope so too, Robert. And I do hope at some point that you'll be hearing soon about our plans for our next retreat, God willing. If we go every 2 years as we've been doing, hopefully we'll get one in next year. But we'll see what that's looking like here, see what the Lord leads us to do. But if we do end up doing that, I'll be looking forward to seeing so many of you, Lord willing, at that. Let's take a look at what the markets are doing here. All the major indices are opening the week in positive territory right now. The Dow Jones is up 1/3%. The S&P 500 is up a little more than 1/2, and the NASDAQ about 3/5 of a percentage point up in the positive. Friday's markets were spurred on by a soft jobs report. They finished pretty well Friday, so the markets today are kind of riding the wave of that. All of the major indices were up more than a full percent on Friday. So this week we have earnings season continuing. As you heard Shannon mention at the top of the show, a bit of a lighter week in terms of the economy, at least compared to last week. Last week was a rather big one, but we still do get a couple of notable earnings reports coming out. So today we'll get Tyson Foods. We'll get a couple other ones as well. Tuesday and Wednesday are kind of the biggest ones. We'll get Disney on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday we'll get Uber, Anheuser-Busch, Airbnb, and a couple other ones as well. Then Thursday we get Warner Bros, U.S. Foods. Friday we'll get AMC. So a little more heavy in the entertainment industry for this week, but not a whole lot coming up here. I know we still have at least one more of the Magnificent Seven stocks to report later on, but this is a bit of a quieter week for earnings. But you can still expect, at least with some of those big ones like Disney and perhaps Uber, the markets might move one way or the other depending on how those earnings reports go. So we'll just keep an eye on for that. Did want to mention one more time, we do have our preborn campaign. I've dropped the link in the chat there. We want to knock this goal out of the park. We're trying to underwrite 100 ultrasound machines. As of this morning, we're almost at 3. So we are on our way there. We're making our way slowly, but let's ramp this up here really, folks. This is a great opportunity for you to be able to not only bless a young mother and to save a baby or many, many babies, but also to bless FISM. This is the time of the year where we ask you to please consider giving to preborn, because the gift that you give to preborn will be matched for FISM. So if you love FISM, give to preborn. And if you love preborn, give to preborn. Do that this month. Financialissues.org, click the preborn banner. It's a great place to go for you to do that. So if you're considering a place to give your stewardship dollars and you're looking for a place to, please consider giving there. Even if it's just $28 to underwrite one ultrasound scan, that could be a life-saving scan. So I wanted to get to a news headline today that I think is very interesting and very controversial, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat if you have any thoughts about this. Last week, I saw this story, and this is Intramural Christian Headlines. This is from a professing fellow Christian. There's a televangelist out there named Jesse Duplantis, who perhaps you've heard of before. He was quoted in a video he did with his wife a couple weeks ago saying that poverty is a curse and that he is wealthy because he is blessed. Now, earlier this month, again, he did this on a live stream with his wife. He said the following, quote, "Me and Kathy, his wife, are very blessed. I'm spiritually, physically, and financially blessed. I've had more people criticize me over a jet." Now, this jet that he's referring to is that he ran a donor campaign with his ministry where he asked his donors to fund a private jet. Many prosperity preachers have done this, and they've kind of said, you know, I'm doing this because of ministry so we can reach people. Something like, it's a multi-million-dollar jet. Just imagine for a second, guys in the control room, imagine if we did this at FISM, if we ran a campaign, instead of one for preborn or something like that, we said, hey, you know what, I really need a brand new truck to be able to do ministry. So you all, you know, consider giving to our ministry so that I can have a new truck or a new plane. It'd be a little odd, right, Elijah?
It would. Yeah, definitely would be, yeah.
That's strange.
Yep.
So anyway, he mentions the jet. He says, they still can't get over it. Criticize me over my house. They didn't pay for it. I paid for it. You understand what I say? Apparently, he lives in a $40,000 square foot mansion. And then he goes on to say, you know that poverty is a blessing, question mark. He says, that's a lie. Poverty is a curse. Now, this man, Jesse Duplantis, is, along with several other big names, including Kenneth Copeland and Joel Osteen, some of the big voices in modern prosperity theology. These are ultra-rich pastors who preach the belief that if you are obedient to God, he will bless you in this life with health, wealth, and happiness. And they'll read certain passages of Scripture that say things like God rewards the righteous, he blesses the righteous, all things that are true scripturally. But as you're going to hear me say in just a moment, there's something deeply demonic about this belief, the prosperity gospel. The truth of Scripture is necessary here. And so we have to ask the question, does God bless people with financial wealth? Well, sometimes yes. Absolutely he does. Sometimes he does. In fact, we talk about that often on the show, that we believe that God does bless obedience. If you've invested your money faithfully with the FISM partnership, perhaps you've received a return. That's a blessing from God. That's a good thing. But is that guaranteed? Absolutely not. And that's really the part of the danger of the prosperity gospel, is that like so many false gospels, it's got some truth in it, but there's a lie in there that poisons the whole thing, that this always happens. That God will bless you with health, wealth, and happiness in your wildest dreams coming true if you're obedient to him. And if you are poor and if you don't have those things, that is evidence that you are not living for God. That's what these people believe. Here's the thing we see far more in Scripture, that those who are righteous will suffer for their righteousness. Paul was not wealthy. Job lost everything because he was righteous, not because he was wicked. He lost everything because he was righteous. Our Lord Jesus himself, perfection personified, was crucified like a criminal. That doesn't fit with the prosperity gospel. And it gets horribly wrong. Here's what it is. It's the belief that God will bless us with health, wealth, and happiness on this side of eternity, when the reality is those blessings are coming to us on the other side. We are never guaranteed our wildest dreams to come true in this life. But we have an inheritance that is beyond what we can imagine in eternity. And that wealth is far better than a jet or a 40,000 square foot house. So I want to encourage you today, friends, that it is far better for you to have a portfolio that pleases God instead of having one that is just financially lucrative. You might not be rich in this life, or perhaps as rich as you could be, but I promise you it will bring great wealth in the next life. And of course, the greatest wealth we're guaranteed in the next life is for all of us who trust in Christ. The inheritance is Christ himself. Salvation, right standing before God, that's the real treasure. And if you have that, friends, no matter how much or how little you have in this world, you've got everything. Praise God. Great to be with you this morning, folks. God willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. Remember, it's all his. All of it is his. It all belongs to the Lord. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money that he's given to us. God bless you all. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow for Financial Issues. Have a great day.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.